Good afternoon. My name is Ramses Sandoval, and I'm a commentator for TUDN USA and TUDN Mexico, involved a long time with Major League Soccer. It's a pleasure to be part of Soccerex and to host this panel, Empowered and Empower. Please join me in welcoming our leaders in Major League Soccer. Kristen Bernard, President of Business Operations for the Columbus Crew. We have Ishwara Glassman-Krein, President for the Chicago Fire. Danita Johnson, President at DC United. And of course, Don Scott, Performance Director for Inter Miami Club de Fútbol. I was expecting a woo. Come on, she's at home, people. Big picture, all of our leaders today have joined their teams at Major League Soccer in the last year and a half, basically. So that's a challenge. I'd like to start by asking each of you about your goals and your respective roles with your clubs. And I'll start with you, Kristen, if that's okay. You are the newest addition to our group of leaders. You were announced as President of Business Operations for the Crew just 2 months ago.
Yep.
Right in the middle of a very brief MLS offseason, so that's challenging, that's tough.
Is that in the middle?
In the middle of a short offseason.
January? Okay.
What have been some of your immediate goals since joining the Crew and really what you've been able to change there?
First, I'd like to thank everybody who stayed for the last panel. Yes, way to go, everybody. Appreciate it. I don't know about you, I'm sure there's going to be people leaving and exiting to catch their flights. I may join you. So my goals. So I think the goal for every team is pretty simple. Win a championship, sell out your building, sell sponsorship. So in terms of how I approach that in the first couple of months, it's been a whirlwind. Number one, I've really enjoyed getting to know the team in Columbus, the staff. They're amazing. Really have gotten to know our folks at Haslam Sports Group, which has been, again, just a pleasure getting to know everybody. Really getting to understand the supporter groups. Like, I'm new to soccer. Some people call me Ted Lasso. But I've really enjoyed getting to understand the culture of the game and have really been wildly impressed with the supporter groups. Has anybody ever painted a tifo? I have. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So spending time like that, we did like a sunrise toast on opening match. So really I've just immersed myself in the fan base. And so really understanding their why and what makes them so excited about the Crew. Because if I don't understand that, there's no way I can grow that fan base, which is a massive goal. So I've been spending my time that way, have been getting to know the key players in Columbus. The next phase is really going to be getting to know our players, getting to know more about executives in Major League Soccer, my counterparts, what people have found to be successful, sharing the best practices, and then really I'll spend time on developing a strategic plan from there, but trying to be really methodical about it and thoughtful, and just happy to be a part of this family. So it's been really a pleasure.
That's fantastic. I'll go to you, Danita. You've been in your role as president for the Capitals team for DC United for less than 18 months. The team has done, big things with the new stadium and whatnot, some big signings in the football, soccer aspect of it with a new coach as well. But what's next for DC United now that you're able to perhaps get more comfortable into your position?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were just getting started on a lot of different pieces. And the first initiative, obviously, for us, we had to, one, rebuild a staff. From COVID, we were down to probably like 20% of our staff, so massive hiring front on that. From a staffing standpoint, establishing process and procedures for us from an internal standpoint. In addition, similar to what KB talked about, learning our fans. They have been through a lot of transition from different coaches, from a coaching change, from moving from RFK to Audi Field, and understanding what their fan experience actually needs to look like and feel like now that they're in a new home along with us. In addition to that, partnerships was a big piece for us this past year and will continue to be. We just closed
Congrats on your big deal, by the way.
Thank you.
Way to go.
Thank you. Just closed a new front of shirt partner, which was a big piece for us, and we have a couple other big things lined up that we're working on. So as we all know, revenue is part of this. So as we're driving revenue, really also establishing our brand and identity as we move forward. We're a legacy club. And with that, we do understand the responsibility of what we need to do to help power the MLS forward, especially as more new clubs come online. It's important for us to not only understand and be a part of our history, but push our club forward. So those are things we're working on as we continue through this next year.
I'll follow up with that and with a similar question for you, Ishwara. Welcome as well. You are basically and essentially on your first full year as president of the Fire after being hired last May. What are your hopes with the Chicago Fire? We spoke before. I know we spoke, and just as Danita was talking about, there's so much that falls under the president really that a lot of us can't wrap our head around. We spoke about championships. We spoke about winning. We spoke about goals. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I took this job not having been in soccer before, having come from the media space and the sponsorship sales space. And the Fire is effectively a turnaround. You know, we're next to last in the league in revenue. We haven't played well in a long time. Let's just own the truth of what it is. But there's huge potential. We're in the third biggest market in the country. We have an owner who cares passionately about Chicago, and a big city with tons of people from the Eastern European community to the Mexican community to all the European immigrants who love soccer. We have a lot of work to do to build fandom in Chicago, so I've been focused on those three things, many of the same things Dina and Kristen mentioned. We play in Soldier Field, which seats over 60,000 people, so our number one goal is to pack the stadium. The thing our owner cares about more than anything is when he walks in the building, he wants to hear the roar of the crowd. We've had a lot of success. Our last game of last season had 31,000 fans, and our first home game had 25. We're making a lot of progress. We've spent a lot of money. We've signed Xherdan Shaqiri, Kasper Shabilko, Rafa Shihos. We've signed some big players, but we have a lot of work to do to have it prove out and be great. Just like that said, we're trying to sign sponsors. We just signed a big banking deal. We renewed our Motorola front of jersey. But lastly, for me, much like what Danita said, a lot of what we're doing is around people. We have a big organization. We have about 150 people, and we've got a lot of work to do, but it all comes down to having really good people there to do it.
Perfect. Great answer. Now, in addition to our club leaders and our club presidents, of course, we want to have somebody on the technical side of things, and we have Don Scott, who was hired last November for Inter Miami, and that is a very interesting position. You've done a phenomenal job. We were talking about it. You're from Newcastle originally. You're in Miami. You're kind of, switching gears, if you will. But Don, what has been your first thoughts on joining Inter Miami and being on that technical side of El Inter Miami Club de Fútbol?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fast and furious for the last 2 months, I would say. It's about catching your breath a little bit. A big thing initially was a lot of learning for myself, not in terms of the role, obviously, but about what was in place already, the staff in place, the structure, how the team had performed previous year. In terms of kind of fitness injuries, fitness-wise, subjectively, objectively, players maybe didn't perform as well last year, so it was looking at that. Injury rates were pretty high, so again, it was looking at the staff in place, was the makeup, the kind of mix of staff, kind of optimal for the whole medical and performance support of the players. Kind of very first introduction with the whole staffing group. I kind of presented to them my own personality profile, my preferences, almost made myself vulnerable in terms of this is who I am as a person, this is my kind of personal, social family, this is how I operate, these are some of my values, and then spoke about how we wanted to kind of progress from there. Then did start look at some of the staff in place, looked at the structure, where we were missing certain areas, where do we need to move staff around. Some staff were proposed new jobs. They chose not to stay. Some staff kind of accepted jobs that maybe had a change in roles, responsibilities, objectives. So really getting the right staff in place, if you like, the right people on the bus who want to be there, who are open-minded and kind of want to work to support the players. I think that was key in the first probably 3 weeks before I was even fully in place in Miami or Fort Lauderdale. And then when we got on the ground in January, again in our department of 9 staff, we had 5 of us were new in terms of players. You look at the first 3 games of the season, I think each game we've maybe had 3 players on the field who started games last season. So You've got a new group of staff, you've got a new group of players. So it's how can you support the players, look at your own systems, processes, obviously work with the technical staff. Obviously I knew Phil previously from, Phil Neville from working with England. So we had similar common language. We understood how I understand how he operates, he understands how I operate. So straight away I had a trust piece with him. It was then building trust with the other staff in the department. And then suddenly with the players, you're now presenting, proposing to them, this is the staffing structure, this is how we're going to support you, this is kind of our philosophy of how we're going to work. And I think all the time with the players, it's trying to explain the why to get their buy-in of what you're trying to do. So yeah, it's kind of been fast and furious. We obviously go into game 4 this weekend, but we're still kind of just refining some of our processes a little bit and just kind of tweaking things and getting things in place.
Fascinating to dig into the technical side of that. I caught the injury rate thing, and with all of these statistics, you have a lot that keeps you up at night, Don. Denny, I'm going to go next to you. With the World Cup in 2026, with the growth of Major League Soccer, obviously with the new franchises, with the new clubs, and you being part of such an historic franchise like DC United, one of the original ones, if you will, the World Cup and the growth of the league, is that extra motivation for you and for the DC United?
Absolutely. It's a key part of us. As you may know, DC is obviously bidding to make sure that we can host some games there. It's, when we think about the birth of MLS, it came after the '94 World Cup, and that what we know about what it creates from a fandom perspective, what it can do, especially for us as a historic market, is really key for us. So we need to be positioned and ready. So when we think about our business right now, we're not just thinking about the next 6 months, we're thinking about the next 4 or 5 years. And kind of one of the landmark things that I have in my head is 2026 and what that means for us. And how do we do things now that set us up for that success to create a sustainable business that will then be able to succeed after that influx of what would typically happen after something like World Cup. I think that's not only my purview, but I'd probably even say from my counterparts is that is in our minds probably almost every day of something that we're striving towards and being prepared for, because if we don't build a sustainable business model to handle the growth influx that can happen after World Cup, then we're doing a disservice to our business. And so our practices now, the things that we're putting in alignment now, what we're setting up in our communities right now truly matter to have great impact in the future.
Christian, I'll go to you next. Well, you guys just got a new stadium downtown. It's beautiful. I've been there. It's world class.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and it's one of those stadiums that actually, and you could argue that for many stadiums, but when you see it on TV, bam, it jumps at you.
Yep.
How much of these new stadiums that are being built, soccer specific, major stadiums, we've seen where Charlotte is playing for the moment, looks beautiful when we have 70K plus, but how much of that really helps the growth of the sport?
Well, it's, one of the core tenets of any sport is just the fan experience. And, what Major League Soccer has been able to create and build with the soccer-specific stadiums is a unique experience. So, we heard from a panel earlier, Cincinnati and Austin and Nashville, about the wonderful buildings that they've built. We did the same thing in Columbus that was really unique to the city and really leaned into the qualities and character of the city. And that's where, what I love about Major League Soccer in general is just the authenticity of it, the communal nature of it. I love that. I talk about all the time, like, people have stopped going to church. Data shows that. And, for Major League Soccer, that's where people can really come together and celebrate together, and they can chant together, and they can sing together. I was at a dinner, and there was some really high-profile people at the dinner at Sloan, and I made them all sing "Wise Men" with me. You guys know that chant, like the song in Columbus? I won't do it here, but it is a thing of beauty where you bring people together in this environment, in this kind of closed environment. That are so passionate about the game, and they can kind of let their hair down. They can be themselves. They can chant. They can scream. They can bang the drums, and we've done an amazing job creating that environment.
Amazing experience. Ishwara, the Chicago Fire kind of went a revamp this year. Specifically, you talked about the superstars that came on. Jairo Torres joins in May, the product of Atlas of Guadalajara. in Liga MX as well. But what's your view from Chicago thinking of this 2026 World Cup? I mean, with Soldier Field being back in the picture, such an historic stadium.
Yeah, it's one thing to think about 26. I'm also thinking about how many tickets I'm going to sell for Saturday's game. So, to be perfectly honest about it, 2026 is, it's something we do think a lot about it. We think about it in terms of how we structure our deals. We look at our sponsorship deals and think about structuring them so that we have time to sell into the World Cup. I mean, MLS is still years behind what you're seeing with the NBA or the NFL and the NHL, and I think these moments for us are really important inflection points in building mass popularity in the US. Though every time I get asked about this, if you were in Chicago, we could sell hundreds of thousands of seats for a Chelsea-Arsenal game or for a Barcelona-Madrid game or for any two Liga MX teams to come to play for us. We don't have a soccer problem in Chicago. We have a fire problem. We need to build our own relevance, but there are hundreds of thousands of people in the city of Chicago who care passionately about soccer, and I meet them all the time, and one of the things that we always say to them, I said, it's fine that you want to root for Bayern Munich or Atlas or whoever your team is, but you're not going to go to their game on Saturday night, so come watch the Fire, come be a fan of ours. Don't give up your hometown team or wherever your country of origin is from, come root for both. And I say to them, we have Mexican players, we have German players, we have Polish players. One of the great things that Kristen said is soccer is truly tribal, but we have lots of different tribes in Chicago, and last season we had players from 15 different countries on our team. We can come be a part of our tribe.
That's great. We love it. Don, you're in the global soccer city of Miami, and Ishwar brought up an important point. There's so many fans, and I think Miami's probably the #1 city where you see Real Madrid fans, Barcelona, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Manchester United, Premier League, all of that good stuff. But for you being in the global soccer city of Miami, that has led to great success in women's soccer and men's soccer, and with all the fan base here, with all the potential really in Miami screaming for a franchise for years, how do you envision the future for MLS and Miami?
I mean, obviously the first thing is to get the stadium secured, which I know some of these guys here are doing an amazing job to try and get that. So obviously we want to get kind of a new home, but even the games I've experienced so far, sometimes I think you spoke about the beat of the drum, like you find yourself, you're in the game and you're immersed in it, and suddenly you find you're tapping along to the drum. So, the fans at the stadium, even when it's the weather is so ridiculous in that 1 second it's raining and a storm and then it's sunny, they're still out there supporting the team, even though the team, right now this season we're kind of on a bit of a wave going into it, but the fans are still there, diehard fans, and I think we can't wait until we're slowly getting the product on the field right, the training, kind of all the preparation of the players, and I think then obviously having a stadium and something that the fans can be proud of and come and attend the team, I think is really an exciting prospect. So, really excited to be part of that future as well.
Yeah, no question. I'll go back to you, Ishwar, and I know you talked a little bit about this, but if you could pinpoint some of the challenges that you see in your market in Chicago, some of the main challenges, and I know you spoke about ticket sales and you want to win and you want championships, but if you were putting up a master class and you highlighted perhaps 2 to 3 points, what would be the most essential ones?
Yeah, the first thing we talk a lot about from Dawn as well as the stadium. So we play in Soldier Field in downtown Chicago. It's a beautiful historic stadium right on the lakefront. It seats over 60,000 people. But it's also the home of the Bears and every major concert that comes through Chicago. So it's a difficult place to play. Working with city governments, as many of you know, can be challenging. And we don't control scheduling. We don't control the field length. Our soccer players are perpetually complaining. I didn't know this till I joined MLS, that the NFL players like their grass longer than MLS players do. And so that leads to constant bickering literally about the size of the grass length, which is not something I anticipated having to get involved in when I took this job. But we don't control food, we don't control parking, we don't control security. And I think when you go to tour these other stadiums like you see in DC and Columbus, you feel this amazing atmosphere, and we have a great supporters network, but it's really hard to build that kind of atmosphere in an enormous NFL stadium. So we're thinking about what are the different options. Simultaneously, my owner, who loves the Fire, loves Chicago, says, well, this is great because you can fill 62,000 seats here. And so I think that's one of the challenges, but I think one of the things that's great about Chicago is we have a huge corporate base. We have a lot of companies standing behind us and supporting us. We have 10 million people, so we have the 4th highest ratings in MLS. There's a lot of good things happening too.
It's so interesting to hear that, and it's not a small detail. 62,000, much harder to fill than a 17,000 stadium or 22,000 fans or whatnot. For you, Danita, what is your view from the capital city, from DC United, and perhaps your main challenge? You have beautiful stadium now. For a long time, fans wanted that. You have it. What are your thoughts?
I think one of our challenges is that we are a legacy franchise, right? So most of the people that have probably touched or felt our product in DC may have saw us when we were at RFK before we moved to Audi Field. So how do you reinvigorate a community around your club when they've been around it for 26 plus years? And so that comes down to, what does the match day experience look like? What are we doing fresh and new? How are we presenting our product and brand? How are we telling our story to our community? It becomes really important, because a lot of that can be, all right, we've seen it. We know what it is. If we decide to get up and go on a Saturday night, we'll get up and go on a Saturday night. But how do we create momentum again? How do we create excitement around that? One of the things, obviously, that always helps is winning, right? But we can't control wins or losses, and anybody that's ever sat in these types of seats in this industry knows that, so you can't depend on that. What we have to do is create that through our brand, our connection through our community, our programming that we're doing, and then how we're connecting to our current fans to help them help us be the voices to others to draw folks back in. So I think that's one of our big things. I have like three things on my board, and fan development is one of the key ones for me as we continue to push forward.
I think that's very important, because a lot of times we get lost in what a general manager do in a president. It's not a sporting president, presidente deportivo, as it's used in Spanish as well. It's so many more things that are off the pitch. Kristen, for you, you guys got that beautiful stadium, you guys got a championship, and you really kind of have that great story. You went from a really stable franchise now to almost leaving Columbus, and that was a sad moment, because the Crew is also an original of Major League Soccer. What are some of the challenges that you face?
You know, the inaugural, franchise is one of them, more the historic franchises, but where you've been in the market for so long, and people think of you in a certain way and don't have the energy of going into a new market. But not only to save the Crew, telling a city and people that they're not worthy of having a team, there's a residual effect of that. And there's a carryover of, okay, then we saved the team, and then Bez and team, they pulled a miracle off and they won a championship. We weren't championship ready, right? So we're in the middle of a pandemic, you win a championship, then you have all this effort going into building this beautiful new facility. And so part of it's a little bit of fatigue of like, okay, we saved the Crew. Okay, now we built this building, and it's like, okay, now we're really going to focus on what was left behind, which was, not a ton of focus on fan development and a lot of investment in infrastructure and in youth soccer, in the fundamentals of how you build a team and how you build a franchise and how you build a fan base. That was forgotten for a few years. And then we went into the pandemic, and the focus was, building this building. Now we got to go back to the basics of, all right, we're going to invest in youth soccer. We're going to invest in our fan base and building our fan base. We're going to invest in these things that, we just weren't for a while, in addition to telling our fans they weren't worthy. And so, for me, I spent 15 years in New York. So there's a lot of swagger in New York. I want to bring a little swagger back to Columbus. It is a really emerging, growing city. It is an awesome, there's, Intel's coming. They're building a huge plant. They're investing $20 billion in the city. They're going to bring, 3,000 jobs. All these other companies are going to come. There's all this momentum. And for me, the Crew sits at the center of that. We are the sports team in Columbus that is going to attract a younger employee population, that's going to be a catalyst for growth, for innovation. We want to be right there in lockstep with city leadership and business leadership, pushing the city forward together. It's no longer about saving the Crew, it's about the Crew pushing the city forward. And that's going to be the shift that we're going to see and that we're going to make happen.
That's great, Kristen. For you, Don, the challenge comes in a different way. As a performance director at Inter Miami, big overhaul in the roster, and you spoke a little about that, and that's got to be tough on you, because they change players on you. You have to get used to them. You have to get used to their work rates. You have to see how healthy they are. Then you have to report to the head coach and maybe come with some bad news. Listen, this guy can't play. This guy can't play. This guy's 60%. This guy is out for the season, and you have to come as the bad news bearer, if you will. What are some of the challenges that you deal with in the day-to-day?
Yeah, exactly what you just said, especially with our head coach. Yeah, it's absolutely that. I think obviously as players came in the pre-season, we had so many new players, so Some players were on an off-season program, so we kind of had a sense of what they might have been following. But for some other players, they came in kind of blind, maybe signed just as we got close to pre-season. So obviously then you're now balancing integration of players with different kind of levels of physical fitness. As well as that, with the technical coaches, myself and the performance team, we're building out kind of a new trainer model, a new way of training and working. Part of that was kind of increasing the amount of high intensity, high speed type work, max speed type work we were doing with players. When you do that kind of training, you risk injuries as well. So again, it was with the coaches, with Phil, kind of recognizing, okay, we can do this work, but we also have to acknowledge and accept that we're probably going to pick up injuries, and we have, although the kind of those players, without giving much away, are getting healthier and closely back to the pitch. So I think it's all of that, as well as obviously educating the players again. For me, that is fundamental to what we do. You educate again the why, and you get greater buy-in, and they understand what you're trying to do in training, kind of the components of training, why this drill might be set up like this, why certain players do different speed drills based on their position, why players do different amounts of the high intensity type work, so again, just based on positional demand. So really it's kind of looking at the overall philosophy, working with Phil and his technical team in terms of what is the language that we're going to use, how do we define drills, what's the physical load for those drills, how can we calibrate them, now how do we start piecing together kind of the train sessions so we get optimal loads out of the players and try and prepare them optimally without kind of pushing them to injury. So yeah, it's kind of all of that, and it's kind of an ongoing process as you go through the season, game after game, because now you've got players accumulating different amounts of playing time. As you said, you've got players coming back from injury, and so it's about the balancing act every single day, and really knowing your players as well in terms of what levels they can, what physical levels they can tolerate, and how much you can push them. And we had a red card last weekend, so Breck Shea's program the next couple of weeks is very different to other players. So it's again just knowing the individual players and catering for the individual player.
Big challenges, then you get the international duty, then you get CONCACAF Champions League if you're participating, US Open Cup, and that becomes more of an issue for you as well. Good challenges, good challenges. Ishwar, I'm going to go to you. I read in your profile about the location of your office, the approachability that you have within the organization of the Chicago Fire, and that's real fun. You're kind of very open to the organization. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny. We think we're all really open. We try really hard to be open until sometimes you realize when you're in this job, nobody actually tells you anything, and then it sort of ends up being a little bit of a game of telephone. It comes back to our point about, trying to have the best people. I think increasingly in the sports industry, we're seeing that we're competing with different types of companies for talent, and we have to be more aggressive and better about attracting people. For example, we increased maternity leave to 14 to 16 weeks. We have 8 weeks of generally paternity leave. We have 8 weeks of FMLA for, say, your grandmother happens to get sick or something like that. We've gone to hybrid work. I decided the other day I didn't really feel like getting dressed, so we've gone to a casual dress. All of these things make a big difference. We're in the office 3 days a week because most people don't want to be in the office 5 days a week anymore, and they don't really need to be. So we're trying to create an environment that's a good place for people to be. I came into this job sort of with my, as Kristen said, a little bit of my New Yorkerism, saying we all need to be here late into the night, we all need to work our butts off. And I think everybody does, but when you hire the right people and you try to create the right environment, they do what they need to do to be successful because they want to, because they care about what we're building and the vision we're trying to get to.
Danita, how do you handle that position? Many times we hear president and we're like, well, it's president. How do we go about this? How do you handle that?
Just being as open as possible. I mean, there's always going to be, no matter what, when you do this job, they're going to think there's something that that they feel like they need to know, and you're not telling them. It just is going to happen, right? But I think you just want to be as open and honest as possible. Share what you're able to share. I'll tell people, look, I can't share everything with you at this moment, but this is what I can share. This is where we're going directionally. We actually changed all of our meeting formats. So we have special project meetings where at any level in our company, you can actually be a part of a major project that we're working on versus feeling like, oh, it's just leadership focused on one thing. We need outside opinions. We need everybody involved and engaged. So we do discussion and decision meetings that are our planning sessions for all of our key projects that we line up month over month so that we're able to execute together. So then what we're doing is kind of creating this team environment for the projects that we're working on. Everybody has an opportunity to be engaged. You can choose for some of these. And then different people from different levels actually lead these. And we teach them from a guideline perspective how to run the meeting and how to walk through it. And what that does is then they get one-on-one time with me, right? So they're the one bringing back what everybody actually discussed, formatted. We'll sit down one-on-one, It could be a ticket salesperson, it could be a VP, but we'll have that conversation and they take that back to the group. So creating environments for people to be engaged at all different levels, creating access points as much as possible. But there are limitations in life, and there's only but so much of all of us to go around, and we got to have some boundaries to make sure that we're being able to maintain the best versions of ourselves and what we're doing.
And that, Kristen, comes with a job description. There's just some stuff that you can speak of, some really high-level stuff. But how do you handle that with your staff?
Well, I think that what Danita talked about in giving everybody a platform so that you can create like true diversity of thought is important. I'm a big believer in people being able to come to work, and there's a buzzword of like bringing your authentic self to work. But I think it's real. I think that giving people an opportunity to really shine is really important. Like just from a leadership standpoint, I kind of I approach it almost like a coach, where I want to get the best out of people, and sometimes it looks different for everybody that I work with, whether it's a corporate partner that you're trying to get the most out of, whether it's your supporter group that you're trying to get the most out of, whether it's your head of marketing. By the way, I need a CMO if anybody's interested. Whoever that is, it's really getting to know that person and knowing them and knowing what makes them tick and what motivates them, that you can get the best out of them. And some of it is just like doing things that demonstrate that they matter. And so, yesterday it was announced that I invested in Gotham FC of the NWSL. That was across the company. I heard from just about every woman on staff about what that meant to them personally. Yeah. So when you walk the walk and you say, no, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, I'm going to invest in women in a real way, in a really demonstrable way, that speaks volumes. And so when you tell people that diversity matters, you better walk it. When you tell people that you are going to demand something from them, you're going to demand the best out of them, you better do it yourself. So for me, it's like walking the walk. For me, it's about developing really individual relationships, and doing the best I can to get the most out of everybody that I work with.
Yeah, you spoke about leadership, and I'm glad that you did, because we're going to finish this great panel with that. And I know it sounds like a cliche and very typical, and Ishwara and I were talking about it before the panel, and what would you say? No, really, what would you guys say? You guys are leaders. You are in essential positions that everyone at some point can look up to. And I'll start with you, Ishwara. What is that advice that you would give to a young leader to get there and to transcend in this business or in any, as president of a professional sports team of the Chicago Fire?
Yeah, I always tell young people a couple of things. One is very much what Kristen said, that be your authentic self. Find a company or a place where you can work, where you can be the best version of yourself. I'm naturally relatively loud and hard charging, and that doesn't work in every environment. Work for an owner, especially if you're going to work in pro sports, whose values you share, because it's really important. And secondly, touch the money. We're all running sports teams, but we're all trying to find revenue. So if you want to grow in sports or almost in any business, be someone who generates revenue for the club, be that selling tickets or selling sponsorships or something else.
Touch the money. You said that before we came on in here, and I love the way you said it. Touch the money. Get in there. That's what could be at some point very important. Don, for you, what is that advice that you could give in such an amazing position for you with your experience in Newcastle in England, coming into Inter Miami, and having a challenging job as a performance director for the club?
Yeah, I'd probably say a bit of belief and resilience. I feel like I worked in women's soccer for over 20 years. I worked with the US women's national team for 10 years and across 2 World Cups, and still at times I wouldn't apply for roles in the men's game because I was like, not sure I'm good enough to do that. So I think one is belief, put yourself out there for a job, whether it's in the men's game or the women's game, because part of why I didn't apply is because I enjoyed working in the women's game and I didn't actually want to be in the men's game. So, being in the men's game isn't necessarily a step up from the women's game. For me, it's about the role. So I think one is belief and put yourself out there if it is something you want to do. And then I think if you do, obviously being in a technical position, maybe 20 plus years ago when I started out at the English Soccer Federation, I was working with the women's team and there was comments like, it's like a Sunday pub team, and, there was a lot of derogatory comments, and you almost had to be thick-skinned because you could join in and kind of banter, if you like, but it becomes unpleasant banter. So I think you then start to develop a bit more resilience to almost give back a bit, but also, you know, not really care what those people say. So I'd probably say it's a bit of belief in yourself, and if you want to do something, go for it. Like, you know, if you can see it, you can be it, and then resilience as well in that field, which, you know, sport is a male-dominated field. So again, I think it's having that belief and resilience to believe in yourself.
That's great, Don. For you, Diddy, the same question to finish off this great panel. What's that advice that you think of, or what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sense of dedication and sacrifice that comes with this work. It's not easy. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but you have to be dedicated to that, and you're going to have to sacrifice some things in life in order to get to where you're trying to go. And is that maybe studying a little bit harder, trying something different? You know what, maybe that one coworker that you don't have the best relationship with, you go out and you figure it out and you make that work. If it is going and saying, you know what, I'm going to sign up for an extra class that's offered through LinkedIn to perfect the skill a little bit better, you have to do that. So there's a sense of sacrifice and dedication that comes with this. And a lot of times I feel like people think if it doesn't come the way in which they thought it should come to them, they're like, well, maybe this isn't supposed to be, or they're upset with the people around them. And I think that's where we get lost. We got to put our egos to the side, and you have to be dedicated in a different way, and you have to be tough from a mental standpoint to forward progress.
Kristen, you spoke about this a lot in her previous answer, and you probably fulfilled already this answer, talking about walk the walk and all that good stuff. Truth be told, motivated me. I was over here like in the huddle, ready to go tackle somebody. But if you could put that into bullet points, you know, what is the advice that you have for young leaders?
I'd say number one is listen. I think the what you can learn as a young person and what you can absorb if you pay attention. I probably thought I had more answers than I did as a young person. I don't know about you guys. And I wish I would have absorbed a little bit more and listened a little bit more. I'm going to give another weird answer. I'd really encourage people to read. Learn about the business, but also learn about life and internationally and domestically. Like, just know what's happening in the world and explore things about yourself that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable. You do those two things and you're smart and you work hard and you have the basics, you're gonna come out like just feeling more confident in knowing yourself more and being able to walk in a room and talk to anybody and be able to walk and talk in any circles. But you're also just from absorbing and learning and listening, you're just going to learn a heck of a lot more and be a heck of a lot smarter than you would have been if you would have been talking a ton, like I was.
Well, there you go. That's great advice. Listen, I want to thank you all for coming, for being here. It's amazing how a couple of you guys have to literally run to the airport, so we appreciate it. These are our leaders in Major League Soccer. We appreciate it very much, and we thank you so much. This was an amazing panel. Thank you.